In this video, we're going to use patterns to multiply integers. So let's look at our previous result. Our summary said if we're going to multiply or divide two signed numbers, so this is when we just have two numbers, you multiply or divide the absolute values, so you could think of it as multiplying or dividing as if both of the numbers were positive. Okay? Then you just have one more thing to decide: what is the sign of, with multiplication, your product. If both signs are the same, the sign of the result is positive. So a positive times a positive is positive. And you know that 3 times 4 is positive 12. A negative times a negative is also positive. And make sure you use this type of language. A lot of times students say 2 negatives make a positive. That's not necessarily true. So the product of two negatives and dividing two negatives, the result is positive. But if we're adding two negatives, the result is definitely negative. And if we're subtracting two negatives, it could be a positive or a negative answer. So this is a nice, easy rule to remember, but if you don't remember that it's talking about multiplication or division, you can make an error. And then if the signs are different, the sign of the result is negative. So either a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. It doesn't matter what the order is, the result is going to be negative. So let's look at our problem. So here's the product of 14 and 23, and here we can look at all the different ways the signs can be related. So the first thing we need to do in any of these cases is find the product of their absolute values, which is the positive values. So 14 times 23. Okay. So I'm going to multiply 3 ones times 4 ones is 12 ones. So 2 ones and carry a 10. So I'm going to add that 10 on. 3 ones times 1 10 is 10, plus 1 10 is 4 tens. So we have 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Okay. So we multiplied the 3 times the 14. Now we put in the placeholder 0 because now we're multiplying by 20, but we're just going to think of it as a 2. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. So 20 times 14 is 280. And if we combine those results, we get 322. Okay. So all of these answers are going to be positive or negative 322. So here, well, that's the same problem we just did. It's positive 322. Okay. Here we have a negative times this 23 is positive. So that's negative 322, since it's a negative times a positive. Okay. Here we have a positive times a negative. And this will be negative 322. And look at this form carefully, because it's tempting to think that this might be 14 minus 23. So no, the reason that I know that this is multiplication is, remember, we call this juxtaposition, which is a fancy name for next to each other. When the parentheses are right next to the other number, then we're multiplying. If we wanted 14 minus 23, we wouldn't have any parentheses. If we had parentheses, we could write it this way. This would also be subtraction. Notice it's subtraction because it's on the outside. Okay. Since the numbers are touching with the parentheses, it's multiplication. And finally, negative 14 times negative 23. A negative times a negative is positive. So we have 322 positive.